My real name is Chauncey L. Chapman. I go by Jake. I was born in Council Bluffs, Iowa, May the 26th, 1931. And my mother didn't want to name me Chauncey, and they convinced her that they would call me Junior, and they would call me JR for short. And that went on all the way up to about the third grade. They said, "What's your name?" And I said, "It's JR." And they said, "No, you have to have a name." And I didn't want to be Chauncey. So I said, "My name is Jake." And nobody knows where Jake came from. But I've been Jake ever since. My dad was a construction worker, did not work a lot, was off a lot. We lived in a little old cabin that was originally a sheep herder's cabin. Most of the time we never had a car. And then when we did have a car, my grandparents lived in Dunlap, Iowa, and we would go there on the weekend. And Dad would always run out of gas. And I don't know where he'd get gas, because I don't think he had any money in his pocket. My brother went to the Merchant Marines in World War II. He was 17. They had to sign for it. He wanted to be a paratrooper, and my dad wouldn't sign. He thought that was too dangerous. So my brother said, "Well, how about going to the Merchant Marines?" And my dad said, "Well, yeah, that'd be a good deal." I remember my brother going, and for months we wouldn't know where he was at. You know, very few letters. I could watch my mom and my dad, especially my mom. You could see it in her face. She missed the boy, of course, yeah. I joined the Navy Reserves when I was probably 17. That'd be probably 1948. 49 was my first trip, and I went to the West Coast on a destroyer. The real reason I joined the Navy Reserves is it paid you some money, and I can't remember now how much it was. But you got to wear a uniform, and you could buy beer. I took 2 trips in the Navy Reserve, one on a destroyer, one on a heavy cruiser, and both times I was below deck, and I couldn't see anything. I could hear, but I couldn't tell what was going on. And I didn't like that. I wanted to be where I could see what was happening. On the heavy cruiser, I was below deck, and it was somewhat like a computer. They would call down numbers from the gun turrets, and you would put the numbers into this machine, and then you read whatever it came out. And I elected to be discharged from the Navy, and I was going to join the Marines. And they said, "Well, if you're that stupid, go ahead." I thought I knew everything about the military when I joined the Marines. And I was kind of an old salt because I'd been in the Navy Reserve. So we went on a troop ship, or troop train, out of Omaha, Nebraska. Going out on the train took us, I think, 3 days. And we gathered more troops as we went across Nebraska. We got into San Diego maybe 9:30 at night. Well, a guy jumped on the train and said, "All USBs, get off of this train." And we got on flatbed trailers, and the guy drove us into the base. And as we went into the gate in the base, there were guys scrubbing the street with a toothbrush. There was guys marching. You could hear them all over the place. And it was dark, and it wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. They just broke you down to nothing, and then they built you back up, gave you confidence. Very strict, and you did silly things. They would have you run over to the sports arena, count all the bleacher seats. But you'd run over there and you'd make up a number, and then you'd run back. And they never challenged you. You just make up a number. At night, a lot of times we'd go out and they'd bury If you goofed off during the day, it'd bury you in sand up to your neck, and then they'd march the platoon over you. And they had to step on your head. And if they didn't step on you, then they dug a hole and got into it. Usually, somebody, as they marched the platoon away, one or two guys would fall off the back end. They'd go out and help the guy get dug out. I never got into the sand. I'd go back and help dig them out. We were all in tents, lived in tents. And no smoking, military food, you ate everything on your tray, except seeds and bones. Every Marine goes to, after boot camp, you go home for 10 days. When you come back, you may wind up with a different job or a specialized job, but everybody in the Marine Corps is trained as a infantryman, and he goes to Camp Pendleton or Camp Lejeune for his combat training. I had dated a girl, was engaged to her. I come home on boot leave after boot camp. That was a 10-day leave. I knew I was going to Pendleton. I knew what that meant, that I was going to go to Korea. We talked about marriage, and I said, I don't think I'm going to have time to get married. I caught what they call 30 days of mess duty. So I don't think I called home. I think I wrote a letter home that said, you know, I'm going to be here 30 days longer than what I thought. And the next thing I know, my girlfriend said, I'll be out there Saturday in June, 1st of June. So she came out, we got married. And we were together 8 weeks. And then I went overseas. I got home in '52, and we went, I was assigned to Barstow, California. I would get up at 3 because I lived off base. And I would hitchhike out to the base, and there was no trouble getting a ride. But you had to walk, I don't know, a couple miles at least into the campsite. And then, of course, the guys got up about 5, but I would usually be there by 5. A lot of times I was a little bit late, but that did not set well. There was a guy by the name of Chesty Puller who was a general. He came down this drive between the ship and the warehouse and had the staff of the flags, general flag on the car, and everybody knew he was coming. I think they'd announced it. Well, as he come running down or driving down, he got out of the car, out of the back seat, before it ever stopped. And 5,000 guys went to the starboard side of the ship. I thought it was going to tip over. It just really leaned over. And that's what 5,000 guys can do to a ship. Got seasick all the way. And that's a terrible sickness. And you'd be real hungry. And of course, being on guard, you got to go to the head of the chow line. You didn't have to wait in line. You'd say, okay, I'm going down and I'm going to have a big breakfast. You'd get down and you'd see them puddled eggs, multicolored egg, and the smell would just, be bad. And you'd turn around and go back out. You wasn't able to eat. And then we went to Busan. My assignment was an ammunition company, an ammo dump, and of course we were back, out of artillery. Artillery couldn't reach us because we had the big dump of ammo. We shared that dump with an Army outfit and a Marine outfit. I was a squad leader, and for the most part we would go into the dump with a squad, and we would offload ammunition from trucks coming up from the south. When I first got there, the line was moving, the front line was moving, so we would go up to the hills after they abandoned the hill and moved on, and we'd go up and pick up old ammunition, and if they were in bad condition, we'd explode them, set them off. If they were good, we took them back out again. So I would be in charge of the people loading and unloading the trucks. At least once a week, maybe every 2 or 3 days, we would go on patrol, and we would go on our flanks of the ammo dump. We'd go out, and then we'd go north, and then we'd come back. And what we were doing was making sure that nobody, we call them sappers, they would try to come into the dump and explode it. A couple of times we found somebody that shouldn't be there. And it would take them out. Destroy the ammo dump, you know, it would make the front line troop very hazardous because they would run out of ammunition and artillery shells. And artillery served an awful important position because they would pin them down, hold them down. We had artillery and they'd come in bags. There'd be a bag of black powder and then a bag of what they called increments. And the increments looked like rabbit food. They were little pellets. And you would put so many pellet bags in behind the big guns and so many bags of black powder. You'd ignite that black powder, which in turn would ignite the pellets, and the gun would explode. We shared the dump from 1st of September to March of '52. Then the Marines loaded up the whole 1st Division, and we moved over to north of Seoul, up by Panmunjom. And the Army guys who were in that area, they come over and assumed our position that we left on the East Coast. We went by truck over to the West Coast, and I guess it was about six months in each area. Korean weather is a lot like Iowa weather. Hot in the summer, humid, and just colder than the dickens in the wintertime. When we went over to the West Coast, we were all by ourselves, just a company strong, nobody else around us, and we had a huge ammo dump. So there wasn't a lot of protocol. In the winter of '51, you would find large stacks of concentrated milk, like evaporated milk is what they called it, I think. And nobody would use it, this big pile of it there. Well, then it would freeze. The ammo dump that the Army had, they had different quarters than what we had. And they would have like a can of sugar, a large gallon can of sugar, and they would have like strawberry jam in a gallon can. We'd go over there and steal it. And one night, a guy went out and got a couple of cans of this evaporated milk, brought it in, scooped out as it thawed by the stove. He'd scoop out some of the frozen milk. He'd put the jam in and some sugar, and it tasted an awful lot like ice cream. If a truck was sitting on the road, we'd steal the copper tubing out of it. It went to the carburetor, and would make us a feed that fed the fuel, diesel fuel, into this homemade stove. It would have sand bottom on it, and the diesel fuel would drip into that, and you could get it going. A lot of times they'd go out, somebody'd have to get up, start a fire again, but it was comfortable with, you know. We had an outside privy, an 8-holer, big outside toilet. By your tent, you had a mortar tube that was at an angle, and that was a urinal. But the big job was always done down at the outhouse. And then you poured gas down the toilet and threw a match in there, and that burned off all the paper. A guy by the name of Ruggles and I, we had the duty of burning the toilet. And Ruggles had a 5-gallon can of gas, and he started pouring it down this one hole. And he poured a lot of it in there. And I said, God dang, Ruggles, I'm not sure you should have put that much gas in there. Well, we had a first sergeant, Patrick, and he had a handlebar mustache. And he would come down about the same time every morning and sit on that toilet and smoke. We were out behind the tent, and the tent just got like, I thought it was going to fly. And Patrick come out with his pants around his ankles, and that old handlebar mustache was just Ruggles and I had to dig a new hole. A lot of mail. I think my wife only missed one day of writing a letter, but I would get them all in a bunch, you know. And I wrote quite often. The Marines gave me courage, or it brought courage out. There's a couple of things that are in my mind that I have, you know, it's kind of hard to think about it, but I don't think about it much anymore. I just come back about a month ago from Korea. Didn't recognize anything. And that really was probably good, because it was just like going to a new country.